that brings us into the clean interlude. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to pause it there. So right now it's just the clean guitar playing, right? I mean, we've let the guitar chords kind of take a step back. The guitar chords in the background, like the rhythm guitars, they faded out. The lead guitar did, its dual harmony, or sorry, it's a dive bomb and then pick scratch just to build the tension. But really, we're bringing the energy down a little bit. So at this point, we are 3 minutes. Well, it comes in, the clean guitar comes in at 3 minutes and 30 seconds roughly. And so, you know, a whole lot's happened, a whole lot of stories happen. We know, okay, humanity probably deserves this. They've been bad, to put it lightly. And so, but what's actually going to happen? That's the question, like that he asked at the end of the second chorus, which is left with his sins. How does this end? So now it's kind of time. It's like, all right, this is, maybe you could see this as like that moment of like that moment of tension, like this last moment of peace, as the world begins to end. They mentioned like an eclipse and heaven falling. Like if you've ever seen like Berserk, right? You know that the image of an eclipse, it's very, and even if you've seen an eclipse in real life, right? Like if you're with other people waiting for it, it's this tense wait as you wait for like darkness to cover everything. It's really cool. We had an eclipse out in Texas about a year ago, and it was a total eclipse, and it literally turned to nighttime. It was like being in nighttime for about 3 minutes. It was crazy. So I think that this imagery here of the clean guitar playing by itself after all of this craziness, it's very cool. It works extremely well. And it kind of evokes that like ominous foreboding imagery. Um, so yeah, let's hear this clean guitar again. So another thing I want to note, so this is the guitar is playing. um, I explained what arpeggios are on the last episode, but in case you don't know, arpeggios are like the single note versions of chords. A chord is when multiple notes are played at the same time. And so he's playing arpeggios of the chord of the underlying chords, right? Something to note is that the chords are actually, we're going back and forth between two chords. We're going back and forth between a D minor and A major 7, which A major 7 is a tension building chord in the key of D minor. So you know, we're we're just kind of swaying back and forth. That's what the progression between these two chords sounds like. We continue to do it until this cello comes in. Right there. I want to pay attention to that right there because it's extremely significant. Let's go back just a little bit. So all of this has felt very smooth, and you might not have even noticed it, but we're actually in a completely different key right now. Totally, totally different key. We're in F minor. Um, you could say we're in kind of a modulated version or like a different mode of F minor, like C minor. I think it's Mixolydian maybe. But yeah, essentially we're in F minor now, and that happens extraordinarily smoothly and very cleverly. Um, I know, like, I do want to talk about the theory here because this is some of the best theory I've ever seen, and it's like using theory to tell a story right on its own with just music. It's very cool. So let's come back. So here. So what happens there is that we actually go from playing we will go from playing D minor, instead of going to A major 7, we go to A flat major. And it's a very subtle change. And the cello, the melody that the cello is playing is it kind of hides that because the cello is playing a very natural melody for the cello, right? So you wouldn't even really notice that the change is that significant, but it's actually a huge, huge change. So let's listen again. So we're in D minor, right there. So that, from a chord perspective, going from D minor to A flat major, it's almost like you couldn't choose a more random chord. There couldn't be two chords that are like further apart, right? So A flat major is the A flat, first off, is the tritone, which again, remember I mentioned that tritone this whole time I've been talking about. Even if you don't know what it is, you know I've been talking about it. A flat is the tritone of D. So it is a note that has a ton of tension with D. And yet because of that cello, we that cello really smooths out that transition. But going from D minor down to the to A flat chord is really weird. Um, I think another thing that smooths it over is that we only have the cello, which is playing a melody on its own, but we also only have those guitar, like those light guitar notes, clean guitar playing as well. So there's not really a whole lot. Like if you heard a full band playing here and you heard that change, it'd stick out. You'd be like, what was that? You know? But because we just have this very calm, peaceful, clean guitar, and then we have this cello that's just kind of, it's just playing a nice melody. There's nothing crazy happening here. It completely hides the fact that we have just done something ridiculous with the theory. Um, Now, what does that mean? Like, I could talk about the theory all day, but what does that mean for the song? Well, it actually means that we enter this very like off-putting, but also kind of dreamy place in terms of the music. Then which is why this sounds so dreamy and off-putting when you hear it, or not off-putting, but it's like it sounds so foreign and dreamy, like we're just in somewhere different, right? Like, and real quick, the choir that comes in as well, it emphasizes that dreaminess because the choir, it's like an additional thing on top of what we already have that we actually are able to use to, because it's playing notes in the key of F minor, right? We don't know that we're even in F minor yet. Like your brain might not have processed it. And so hearing these new notes come in, it's like we don't know that that's happened rationally, like to the average listener. So hearing these notes, they sound so new and unique because they are. They're notes that probably haven't been played in the rest of the song throughout the whole song. It's a whole different key, everything's changed, but we didn't even realize it. So listen to how dreamy and crazy everything sounds once that once those choirs come in. Boom. And it's like, so I'm pausing there because it does sound just bizarre, and like they know what they're doing, by the way. So they know, like, with the key switch, we're throwing the listener off without them even knowing it, and we want to enter this kind of dreamlike world, and then we make the choir actually sound dreamlike, like from a tonal perspective too. Like the choir doesn't, it's not going like, oh, like Gregorian chant or something. Like, it's a dreamy, like Nightmare Before Christmas choir. And so there's just multiple layers of like how we're gonna get to this. How are we going to evoke the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings that we want to evoke with this section? Now, what's funny is when we come into this part, uh we start off with the A flat, right? The A flat major is the first chord that like plays in this part. A flat, I don't know how to explain this, so I'm going to give it my best, but A flat is the relative major chord of F minor. So A flat major and F minor have the same notes. Like the key of A flat major is has all the same notes as the key of F sharp minor, or sorry, just F minor. So we actually come in on like the major chord, like the happiest version of the chord. But because it's so wacky compared to the D minor, because it's the tritone of D minor, it's happy, but it still sounds a little strange and ethereal. So that's this note right here. Hold on. Right here. It's an extremely happy note. Like we've entered the new key and we're on like the happiest part of that key, but we don't really know it yet because it's so strange compared to the chord that we heard before. But as we continue to play in that new key, we're going to go to different chords that aren't quite as happy, but it's still going to we're still going to have that light floaty feeling. And then what happens is even we're in this new key now, we're actually going to switch over to darker and darker chords until finally we end up at F minor, which is the darkest minor. Like that is the root note and that is the dark chord, and you'll know exactly when that is. So let's keep going, but we're floating right now, and then it's going to slowly get darker. So we're still playing, major chords and nice chords. This is major. This is major. But then right there, that's actually a tension building chord in the key of F minor that builds into F minor, but it's still a major chord. That's what's interesting. It's a major chord that builds tension into F minor. So now it's actually an eerie sounding chord, and it sets up, for those of you who don't, it's C major. So it's the harmonic minor version of C. So C major, which has E, it has E, like a natural E, which builds into F, the F minor. So now we've built this tension. So we're floating around in this new key using like relatively happy chords, but now we're building tension, and it's going to sound extremely dark when we finally get to the root minor note, which is F. Let's go again. Right here. So that's F minor, all of that. So you see what happened there? And like the horn comes in perfectly to like really allow us to slam down into that F minor. So long story short, this whole song is in D minor. We make this crazy transition into F minor, but it's like super effortless. And then we float around in F minor without actually playing the chord F minor for a bit. And then when we finally get to the chord of F minor, it sounds huge and impactful because we've been building up to it for a few chords. And we've also been layering on our cello, our choir, our strings, all of this stuff. And then we finally bring in this ominous horn that brings us into F minor. And so all that tension that we've been building comes to a point. So let's hear it again. Now, another thing that's very interesting here, there's a lot of things that are interesting, but one of a very interesting thing here is that they only do 3 chords. So they do the F minor, let's see, F minor to D flat to E minor, right? Which E minor is kind of a strange chord. I'm not gonna like E minor is a weird chord to play in the key of F minor. But long story short, they play 3 chords. Let me show you those chords. So that's F minor. And here's D flat major right there. And then E minor right here. So we only played 3 chords, which is kind of weird. Usually you would have 4 chords, but so now we're gonna do 3 chords again. But here's what I want to emphasize is that we actually, the next section and the whole rest of the song after this is still in D minor. So we actually have to get back to D minor from where we're at. But So not only did we like, it's kind of funny, right? Like you wrote yourself into F minor and now you have to get yourself out of F minor. But they're going to do it by setting up, okay, there's only 3 chords here. So they're going to do 3 chords again and replicate it, but then they add a 4th chord to build tension back into D minor. It's kind of interesting. Like that 4th chord has a lot of tension to it, but they, so it's like twofold, right? It builds the tension a lot, but then it kind of sneakily gets us back into D minor. So let's hear it again here, or let's hear the next 3 chords. So back to F minor, right there. And then this is actually D minor, but it doesn't sound like it's resolving. It's building tension. And then C right here. And then that's the 4th chord. And then we're back at D minor there. So we go F minor, then D minor, but you heard when I said D minor, it doesn't actually sound like it's resolving. It sounds really off, right? Like F minor sounds like the resolution because it's still the key. But we go F minor to D minor to C major, which C major is a tension building chord in the key of F minor. Remember I mentioned C major earlier? So we're building a lot of tension in F minor, but then we play that one extra chord, which is actually D flat major, which builds us back into D minor. So here, let's listen to that whole thing again. All right, so we've got F, D flat, E. Now we come back to F and it resolves. F, D minor, but it sounds tense. C major, which builds tension in the key of F minor. D flat major, which builds even more tension, but gets us back to D. Very cool stuff. I know for people who don't know music theory, maybe that made little to no sense, but I just wanted to at least put that out there and explain what all of that was because I don't know. I think it's cool. And I think it's fun to talk about. And it's like these little things where like you might not have ever noticed it or thought about it, but like yeah, they have that one extra chord there. It sounds perfect in the song. It sounds great. It's building tension. It works. The imagery here is off the charts, right? Like the eclipse, the apocalypse is descending upon the world. It's all just crazy. But then like knowing that there's these little theory tricks that they're doing in order to make all of that happen, and then knowing that like that extra 4th chord is what actually allows us to resolve back to the original key of D minor, I think is just super cool. So yeah, um all of that aside, this is like the final dark moment before the apocalypse actually takes place.